And welcome in, everybody. It's Big Ten football and beyond. I am Chris Landry. Just a couple of minutes late here is we had some technical issues that appears to be resolved now. A lot to get to today as we are going to take you not only around the Big Ten, but as we like to do, it's Big Ten football and beyond. We're going to take you around the country. We've got another coaching search underway as Virginia Tech has let go Justin Fuente officially. So we're going to get into that, give you an update on USC, LSU, where Virginia Tech might go. What's the latest on Miami and maybe what they might do there. Washington as well. Florida, a lot of things going on. It's a very, very busy time of year. A reminder that if you are catching this show via the podcast version, we appreciate you joining us. And we always encourage you to check us out live on twitch.tv, Facebook, YouTube, so you can join us in the chat room. We always appreciate you. Remember, this is a Big Ten show, but we cover other college football topics around the country. We want to invite you that if you like this show and we appreciate the shows, let us know, and you can do that by signing up for Big Ten football and beyond, or just go to LandryFootball.com when we break down or we post it for you, tell you how to sign up. That'll help you, help us get a good feel for the algorithms and everything that we're doing with the show. Look, we're going to kind of look at things at the end of the season and streamline what may be of most interest, maybe combine some of the shows. We're looking at a few things. I'm thinking about a few things, but this will help to let us know what it is that you like and maybe what you tend to lean towards. Think I have a pretty good feel for it, for basically the feedback that we've gotten for this point, but we also like to get even more feedback. So if you're willing to do that, we'd appreciate it. Um, Details over at LandryFootball.com, all the film room breakdowns. We're working on a lot of things right now to give you an update on what's going on this time of year. It not that you really care about my schedule, what I'm doing, but this is probably now until the end of the season the busiest time of year. People always say, "What do you do for the holidays and this and that?" It's going to be the biggest, most challenging time as it always is. Why? Well, you've got the rest of the college football season left, so that's busy as well. Of course, we've got a number of weeks left in the NFL, just past the halfway point. So the in-season schedule and the film breakdowns are still just as plentiful. But as we get towards the end of the season, being on committees with these all-star games and getting guys for the draft prospects, uh, getting that situated is another thing added to my plate. Um, Recruiting is huge because you've got the early signing day in December. Um, but the coaching searches, there's really not many searches that I don't at least become involved in to some degree. No, I don't decide who's going to get jobs, but it is something that, at least in form of an evaluation of prospects or assessing of situations, there's very, very few times where I'm at least not involved in some cursory way, and it involves a lot of processes. From it may be the school, it may be the team, it may be the candidates or candidates or the agents. I mean, there's a lot of things. So it is very hectic and probably spend more time on the phone than I care to. In fact, it's the thing I'd least like to do is talk on the phone or be on Zoom calls. But that's kind of where we go. So in terms of the coaching searches, I got a question that was sent in by by William that says, how do how much do you put into, or how much validity do you put into report to media reports, And how do you classify good information versus just hearsay? Well, I think there's some folks that do a good job with reporting, but remember this, that reporters have to put information, get it secondhanded. They have to trust with who tells them certain things, and it may or may not be true. So they're beholden to that. Um, for me, and here's the thing, you hear this. There's a coaching search at fill in the blank school. With the people who cover that school, people think that, well, that's the where to go to get the information. It's really often not the best way, and here's why. Because they cover that school, they're going to get the information from that school and whatever they are. When I say information, false information, leaks, they will are beholden to what they get out of the school that they cover. They don't have contacts with the candidates. So what's the definition of, or should be the definition of getting good information, is to essentially get it from both sides. Two sides to a story, right? We're only getting it from one side. So it's difficult. It's very difficult to get it right. And so I think you need to keep that in mind always, that it's difficult to get it right. In terms of what I do, first of all, I'm not trying to break news. Often we do here, but it's only when I'm given permission to do it and I know it firsthand. So I'm not going to go that I hear from a source. There's no such thing in my mind. It has to be the source. And it has to be, if somebody says, yeah, we're okay with you letting them know we're going to hire so and so, I got to make sure that the candidate is on board with that too. And so it needs to be confirmed for the two people involved. But I'm not smart enough to figure out who's going to tell you the truth and who's not. And so I think that most of that needs to be understood, that in the process of what I get involved in is I have to look at it from both sides. A lot of what I feel and what might be the case is whether it makes sense and whether it can be corroborated or not. So that gives me a good feel for whether something is legitimate or not. Um, so there's a lot of speculation. There's always a lot of speculation of candidates in who might be fits, who might not be good fits. And then you go from there. And then we figure out at some point um, what might make sense. The Virginia Tech job has opened up. Uh, it was something we talked about on the ACC show for the last 2 or 3 weeks, and talked about on other shows that this was likely going to happen. I don't, there's a lot of speculation there in who might be fits. There's a lot of talk about Hugh Freeze and whether he'd be a fit there. He's at Liberty, so he's in the state of Virginia. Let me just say this. Based upon Whit Babcock and the administration at Virginia Tech, based upon their history and the way they do things, having someone that has any off the field issues is not the direction that they normally would like to go. So I don't think that there's much there, but who knows? Um, Certainly, you're going to hear, a Will Healy or a Jamie Chadwell, guys that have some interests. Um, Billy Napier's name comes up all the time because he's a guy that's kind of a up and coming group of five guy that's young, and now he does have ties to the South Carolina area. So Carolina is he was very interested in the South Carolina job, so I could see that being an interest here. There have been some assistants, Mike Elko, who was a defensive coordinator at Wake Forest, now at Texas A&M. This would be a job that he'd have to listen to and would maybe have some interest in at least considering. I don't know that if you're Mike that you're going to get a better job than this type of job. We'll see. Dave Clawson is a name that's been mentioned. Um, and we'll go from there. Certainly, a lot of the wishful thinking, Luke Fickell, you're not going to get Luke Fickell out of Cincinnati to go to Virginia Tech. Um, you know, so that's that. I will mention this. A lot's been asked about the Miami job. And the Miami job, the athletic director, um, Blake James leaving. I'm gonna recommend something and talk about it. If I were Miami, this is what I would do. Um, I would make an offer, and I think you got to think outside the box. Miami, I would make an offer to one of their own, Mario Cristobal, to be the athletic director and head coach with the idea that he could hire, quote unquote, under him, an athletic director to handle the athletic director duties because the whole athletic director duties can't be done by a head coach. But it's a way to say you're in control. You're going to only answer to the president of the university, Mario, and we're going to take the money and provide you the resources that you need. I don't know if Miami is willing or capable financially to do that, but that's what they would need to do. And it would be the only way they can get a guy. And again, you would not have him doing both jobs. You would have someone else under him doing that job, someone of his choosing. I actually came up with this thought process when LSU was trying to keep Nick Saban back in the day from going to the Dolphins. And I thought Nick was going to go anyway. But the question was to me, well, you know him. What would you do to try to keep him? And I said, look, I mean, you can't you can't keep him from going to the NFL, and that's where he wants to go. So I don't think you're going to be able to do that. But if you were going to do that, you're going to make your best effort. Make him the athletic director, vice chancellor, and let him hire an athletic director under him. And I even, had the guy that I thought would be the guy that would be the fit for it that Nick would probably hire would be somebody like an Oliver Luck at the time, that who Nick knew from his days with the Oilers, and this is Andrew Luck's dad, and you've known for him as someone that's been involved in athletic administration since that time, and then XFL and what have you. But I think those type of creative ideas is something you need to maybe consider if you're a program like Miami, that you've got to find a way to be crafty with your resources. Put your money in a way that get somebody that is willing to, um, in order to win at Miami, you've got to gain back control of South Florida recruiting. Mario potentially could do that. But why is he going to leave leave Oregon to go to Miami just because it's at school? Well, he won't. And even if he did, he wouldn't have the success that he's having at Oregon because the resources are not the same. So you're going to have to commit the resources, and you're going to have to be creative to why would I leave? Because here's what we're willing to do here that's different. It's a thought. It's an outside the box thought. I'm not saying it's going to happen. Don't go, hey, this is what Landry thinks going to happen. But that's kind of where I would go. TCU, I think it's Sonny Dykes' job to turn down. I have said for a while, I think Dave Aranda would be a great fit at LSU. I think he'd be a great fit at USC. I think he's got a really good shot at the USC job. I don't know that Scott Woodard is high enough on Dave Aranda to make that move, but I think he'd be a really good fit there. So I don't think that he has as good a shot at LSU as he might have at USC. Luke Fickell is still in the mix due to Mike Bohn. We'll see where USC comes along with that. But that's kind of the latest around the coaching searches. If you've got any questions, bring them on over into the chat room and we'll get to them. Washington, um, look out for Justin Wilcox. I think he would have an interest in leaving Cal to go to Washington. I know Kalani Sitake's in the mix there. Um, I think it's probably a little soon for Kalen DeBoer and Brent Brennan there. I don't know that you would get Kellen Moore over there. Todd Monken, I think, is someone that they would consider. I think Dave Aranda could be a candidate there if they wanted him. Would Brian Harsin want to go back this quick? I don't think he'd want to leave Auburn, but just keep that in mind over there as it relates to that job. So we don't have a lot of issues in the Big Ten. Remember last year when a lot of people thought Tom Allen would be a great fit. It's one of the things I remind folks. You have one great year. This is the risk you have by jumping on a guy based on 1 year. Is this enough of a sample size? Indiana is certainly struggling with Tom, but take a look around the landscape. Indiana, Northwestern, Illinois, Maryland, Nebraska. We know Scott Frost is coming back. We know that things are stable with Shiano. We know that Jeff Brom has certainly done good things to keep his position at Purdue in good shape. Certainly the same thing with PJ Fleck. We've got certainly to watch on Penn State as James Franklin continues to try to self-promote himself to other jobs. Would he leave? I think Jim Harbaugh's safe, and certainly Mel Tucker's likely going to stay at Michigan State now. It's very likely we see no openings in the Big Ten unless somebody leaves, unless Mel leaves. Unless somebody's foolish enough to hire James Franklin, then you could have probably a better coach being open up at Penn State. But kind of taking a look around the games this weekend. We tell you that we thought that Purdue was not going to be able to match up against Ohio State like they did against Michigan State, that they would not be able to be the spoilers again. It was dominated by Ohio State. They dominated from jump, and they had 124 yards, and C.J. Stroud was outstanding, 5 touchdowns. The receiving core, Smith and Najiba played very well. Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave graded out well. Mayan Williams, and Travion Henderson were outstanding as well. Really good play. This Ohio State team is clearly the best team in the conference. A clear playoff caliber team. I didn't like the way the youth of that defense continues to kind of stagger in games and were a factor late as they gave up leads. Iowa taking care of business against Minnesota. You know, you never give up against Kurt Ferentz, and how he's able to craft and get his team better. You're seeing a little bit of improvement out of the Iowa offense with Alex Padilla. The running game didn't do a whole lot, but man, they just squeeze blood out of a turnip. They just do a phenomenal job. It's going to be a tough loss for Minnesota as they were out. They were greatly outgained. They were dominated in the time of possession, which is really important in Big Ten play, line of scrimmage play. So good performance by Iowa there. Tough loss for Minnesota. For Michigan, getting it done against Penn State. Maybe as good a win as Jim Harbaugh has had there, which is saying a lot. Which is saying a lot in a negative way. He hadn't had one. It's maybe as good of a win. And yet, Cade McNamara, Hassan Haskins played well. You know, Michigan at least can keep their Big Ten hopes alive until they play Ohio State. But they're in good position to go to a nice bowl game. Penn State continues to be undercoached, underperformed, overhyped by the head coach. Um, really did a poor job. Game management continues to be an issue. This is a team that's consistently poorly coached, and yet the media buys into the James Franklin narrative of how good he is. It is amazing how gullible a lot of fans and a lot of media are. Football people, I cannot imagine that a USC would make a move on a James Franklin. I certainly don't think LSU would. I would disown them if they did because they know how I feel. This is just a complete overhyped situation, and I feel bad for Penn State. I don't think they're going to fire James Franklin, but Penn State would certainly be so much better off without him. I think they could find a better coach. Uh, Michigan has really done a good job defensively, and I think they've maximized things. I just don't think they're at the level of where Ohio State is. Certainly, Northwestern, Wisconsin continues to play well. I get it; they've not played really good teams recently, but they're played well. They're playing like the best team in the Big Ten West. Very, very impressive performance there. And Michigan State getting it done over Maryland. Look, Michigan State's had a good year. They're a good team. They're not a great team. They're not going to match up well against Ohio State this week, but they've done a really good job. And Indiana struggling against Rutgers, impressive. Well, Rutgers challenged Penn State. I don't know this week. We're going to get into it, but I would go with Indiana. Work my way up. Northwestern, Illinois, Maryland, Nebraska at 10, Rutgers at 9, Purdue at 8, Minnesota at 7, Penn State at 6, under coaches they are, Iowa at 5, Wisconsin at 4, Michigan at 3. I'll put Michigan State at 2 because of the win, but I don't really believe strongly that they're the second best team. I think it's wide open for the second best team of the Big Ten. It's Ohio State and everybody else in terms of the Big Ten. Illinois is at Iowa this week. Only 2 weeks left, folks, in the regular season. Indiana's hosting Minnesota. Michigan goes to Maryland. Michigan State goes to Ohio State. Said Michigan, Minnesota's at Indiana, and Nebraska's at Wisconsin. Northwestern is hosting Purdue. Penn State's hosting Rutgers. Purdue, as I mentioned, is at Northwestern. Rutgers is at Penn State. Wisconsin, again, is hosting Nebraska. The interesting game, obviously, is Ohio State hosting Michigan State. I don't think this game is going to be as close as people might think. I think this is going to be a blowout type of game. We'll get into it on LandryFootball.com in the breakdowns. But that's going to be the most intriguing game of the weekend. As I think that Ohio State is, because of the fact that they've got this game in Michigan, I think are going to clinch the East and be the only team from the Big Ten that has a real chance. On the national playoffs settings, as we get to the rankings again tonight, you'll see Georgia, you'll see Alabama. We know what's headed there. We know that the assumption is that if Georgia beats Alabama, Alabama's out. I think it does matter how the game looks. I think that Alabama has the only chance, not only the best chance, but the only chance of a two-loss team to get into the playoffs. But I will submit to you, if Alabama plays Georgia close, there are a few things that need to happen, okay? Georgia would certainly be in. Ohio State, if they run the table, which I think they will be in. Oregon would deserve to be in if they run the table. Now, they've got Utah, and I'm going to have that as one of my special game breakdowns this week, although we break down all the games. Oregon, Utah. I don't see Oregon beating Utah twice, but if they do, they should be in. Then that would leave Cincinnati and Alabama. An unbeaten Cincinnati, a two-loss Alabama. There'll be a debate, but I could see probably they would go with Cincinnati. But if Oregon loses, which to me, I think that Oregon losing to Utah once is a probability, not just a possibility. That would knock out Oregon. That would put a path for Cincinnati to get in. And then who's the fourth team? I ask you in that scenario. I mean, who? The Big Ten, don't talk about Michigan State or Michigan. They're gone. Oklahoma State, a one-loss Big 12 champion. Okay, that's a possibility. But, what if Oklahoma State loses to Oklahoma? Does a two-loss Alabama that plays Georgia close, do they get in over a one-loss Big 12 champion? What's the possibility that Oklahoma State loses? And, there's a two-loss Big 12. What if the Big 12 gets knocked out like the Pac-12 is, maybe going to get knocked out? I think you got an issue. I don't know that, let's say, a one-loss Oklahoma gets in. I don't even know if they're going to have one loss. I think you could have a scenario where there won't be any other option but to put a two-loss Alabama team in if it's close. Because if the Pac-12 is out and the Big 12 is out, I mean, who else you putting in there? I don't think a one-loss Notre Dame gets in over a two-loss Alabama if a two-loss Alabama plays Georgia close. I think we have a lot of football left. I'm not saying that's the way it's going to be. I'm not saying that's the way it should be. I'm saying there's a lot of football left. Let's see how it plays out. Check on over to LandryFootball.com for all the latest film room breakdowns that we have for you. We'll keep you up to date on everything going on around the coaching searches. Again, the film room breakdowns, we got it all for you. See, we have no questions in the mailbag segment today in the chat room. So I appreciate those of you that have listened, and we appreciate you joining us. And we'll join us again next time or another edition of Big Ten Football and Beyond, here part of the Landry Football Network. Take advantage of the football season sale over at Landry Football. Take care, everybody.